What if you were told you could never do your favorite activity again? What would this do to you? Would you have something else to fill the void, or would it wreck you? Stephanie Corder faced this fact 10 years ago while fighting a chronic disease that left her bedridden. She spent 7 years in bed using a wheelchair, walker, leg braces, and canes, trying to fight this painful condition she was experiencing. But what made the difference? How did she go from bedridden to a successful business owner? What were the trials she faced throughout her journey, and how did she overcome each one? Her story is inspiring, and I know you're going to take something away from it. So let's step into the fire with Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, thanks so much for joining me on Red Hat Mindset. I'm so excited to dive into your story today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I absolutely love listening to you. So it's an honor to be able to be here.
Well, it's been so fun to get to connect with you and get to know you a little bit better. But for my audience, I would love for you if you could just share a little bit about your family or something to tell us who you are as we get started.
Yeah, well, I'm a mom. I have three children. I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 14-year-old, two boys and a girl. And I homeschool two of my children. I'm a mompreneur, so I own a full-time marketing coaching company. And like all of us moms, we always have our hands dipped in a million different things because that's the season of life.
Oh, yes, we do, don't we? And we want our hands. I feel like we want our hands dipped into everything. I'm like, what are we doing here? Anyway, but
Yes.
I your story was so inspiring, and that's why I wanted to bring you on today. But 10 years ago, you found yourself fighting a chronic disease that left you bedridden, and not just for a couple days, not for weeks, but for years. So can you take us back on that journey with you? What happened? And I want to know, what did doctors say about what your future would hold?
Yeah, 10 years ago, people would say Steph lays it all on the field and everything she does. That was physical, mental. Like I was a hyper energizer bunny persona. I served with an international ministry. I had been in ministry full time. I was doing Boy Scouts with my oldest, Cub Scouts with my middle, Girl Scouts with my baby, a homeroom mom with two kids, led in 4-H. We had our house on the garden tour. We were had aquaponics and rabbits and chickens and changed everything to edible. I mean, it was a very hyper persona. We hiked, we camped, super full life, loved our life. And then just one day I'm walking across the living room floor and I felt like I had these hot rods sticking up my feet. And I was like, whoa, something's not okay. Did I get stung by something? Did something happen? But it just progressed. And I got to where I couldn't walk around. And the community of which we're in, many of the parents that were in the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, I had physicians and nurses and medical people. And thank goodness they knew I wasn't crazy, as I would describe, like what was happening to me, what was happening in my body. And so they wanted to help. And so they began to refer me to all these different doctors and, baroneurological, all these different places. And nobody really had an answer. They were like, well, maybe it's this. Well, maybe it's that. And so we would try modalities. And as we would try them, I would get worse and worse. I mean, we were friends with our podiatrist. We knew him personally, a neighbor. And he was like, just so perplexed. And eventually, he ended up saying, Steph, here we had tried Chinese medicine and Western medicine and kinesiology and chiropractic and all these different things. And he said, Steph, maybe it's just simply plantar fasciitis. Let's do the surgery. And, you're desperate because I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk around. I couldn't garden. I couldn't do anything. And so went in and had surgery and the condition just exploded. And I came home crying, calling him on the phone saying, Dennis, something is really wrong. But again, he had zero idea what was happening. Like here he just stuck. Steph, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what to do with you. And eventually, through, different friends of ours researching all these different things, I found a diagnosis and found a doctor, a pain doctor who could support me that knew a little bit about it. And I had developed this disease that was called a suicide disease, only second to terminal cancer and level of pain. And I remember sitting in his office And he had done different tests to verify that that was what it was. And he said to me, he said, Stephanie, I need you to come to terms with what has happened. You will never hike again. I'm gonna cry. You will never hike again, much less walk around a building without crying. And I remember, like, you just turn into a 2-year-old. I just started bawling like this little kid, and everything in me was just screaming out like, no, no, no. And I look at him, and he's got tears in his eyes, and he said, Steph, I'm just as frustrated as you are. There is no cure. People like you get worse. It spreads throughout the body. I need you to accept it so that then you can come to terms with peace with it. And thank God I'm not wired that way. And my husband's not wired that way. And, we basically over time, I mean, I just progressively got worse and worse to where I lived the majority of my life in my bed. I was on some of the hardest medications you could think of, 17 drugs a day. And yeah, I cried a lot. And I pleaded a lot before the Lord, asking, for healing. And my husband, he never let me stop trying. And
Mhm.
so if somebody would say, like, pour apple cider vinegar on her, or I don't care what they'd say, we would do it. I mean, I bought more oils and poured them on myself than you could shake a stick at. I can't say they did anything. I do think oils are valuable, don't misunderstand. But in that case, I just smelled really pretty. Nothing was making these enormous impacts on me. And you would think, as a born again believer, you would just never give up, right? That you'd be like, oh, it's going to come. But that's just not reality. And so there were times that I lost all hope.
Mm.
I didn't think, I thought that you begin when you're sick to see yourself as a burden on those that you love. And we had spent about $200,000 trying to get me better, and I was no better. And so it was incredibly, defeating. And I remember one day, and you hate to even say this, but I remember one day I made my mind up, and I was like, it'd just be better off if I wasn't here. And everybody had left, and I went in the garage, and I don't know anything about killing myself. So sit in my Land Rover with the car going and the garage door closed. And I'm like, okay, God, this is it. And it didn't happen. I didn't go to sleep. Nothing changed. And so I got mad and I was furious. Like, I can't even do this right. And I literally had to climb out of the car, crawl into the house, get in my bed. And my husband shows up. And I said, what are you doing home? I was already just furious. What are you doing home? And he said, honey, I don't know, but I just felt like God told me to get here as fast as possible, that we needed to have a serious conversation.
Oh,
And
wow.
And and so I thought, well, that's it. He's going to divorce me. It's it. And I said, it's okay, honey. It's okay. And he said, no, listen, we made a commitment in sickness and in health. And I said, yeah, I know, but you can be released from that. I'll go home to my mother. I'll let you have your peace. It's okay. And he said, honey, no, 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 no. You can't leave me. And it was
Wow.
just a God moment, right? Like, I mean, it was just a God moment. And so I had to, tell him like what had happened, and ask for his forgiveness. And it changed the dynamic. Something like that changed the dynamic from where we may have been fighting a suicide disease, but that wasn't where we were going to go. We had hope in one another, and that God was going to manage this thing, no matter what it was going to look like. Right.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I love how God uses simple things. Like, I love how he told your husband, "Come home," and he listened to the nudge. The little things that we hear, and do we actually act on them, and what of difference they could make. And going through this struggle, I just can't imagine, because you have kids at the time. You're living your mom life. You're living, everything, and you've probably going from having control of everything and being all in on all things to not being able to do anything really. What were some of the mindset blocks that you had to deal with in that time?
Oh, well, just, worthlessness, right? Like that was a big one. Was I worth, anything? And what value did I bring? And Thank goodness I found a really good counselor. And in one of the sessions, he said to me, Stephanie, when did you stop seeing God as a mystery?
Mm.
And immediately in the moment, I was like, my God's not a mystery. I know all about my God. My God loves me. I know my Jesus. But then he said, don't answer this. Just go home and sit on it. And that was wise because I thought, yeah, there's just a whole lot we don't know. And we're just okay with it.
Mm. Yeah, so true. So true. And that is, I mean, the feelings of worthlessness can come in all different forms. Yours came in pain and that point of feeling like you want to give up, because I know so many want to just give up, especially in the times that we're living and all the things. What gave you that hope in the time? When did that click? Was it when you and your husband had that conversation where you really felt a spark of hope, or when was it?
Well, it was not long after that. I was just reading my Bible one day and I came across Isaiah 46:4. And in Isaiah 46:4, he says, even in your gray hairs, I am he. And he tells us in that scripture that he will rescue us, he will carry us, he will sustain us. And so, I did what every mom does. I typed it on a piece of paper, printed it, and stuck it on my wall. Like, I need to see this. and I put it on my closet, which was on the right hand side of my bed. So I would lay in bed on my right side, and that would be my image. That was what I saw. And and I had a true sense of God and his love for us. And I believed, if I believed in him, I could believe in his word. If I could believe in his word, I could believe in the promise. And if I could believe in the promise, then I knew it was for me. Now, that's not to say over the years I looked at that I didn't scream it, Daddy, now,
Mhm.
and just furious and crying and weeping. Please give me this. Like, that's your promise to me. Give me my promise. But that scripture was an anchor. I could believe in it. It was direct from God. I could believe in it. And, even today, I mean, here I am. Like I said, they said I'd never improve. And through a dynamic of trying different things, we found something that did change the game, that was completely out of the wheelhouse of all the doctors and friends and people we have. And they never even, it's science, it's in the National Institute of Health, but none of them even knew about it. And so after we got to that point and I began to improve, you still go through life stuff. And I still have that scripture on my wall
Mm.
because I know today, like if it's a junky day, I can turn to that scripture and go, okay, you're going to rescue me. You're going to sustain me. You're going to carry me. You are the one doing it. And I just need to take action.
Yeah, so good. So good. And I know now looking at you, we wouldn't know that you went through what you did, 10 years ago, but it was 7 years of
Mhm.
pain and being bedridden and different things and walking with the canes and being in wheelchairs. And I remember you said that when you hit remission, you still were struggling, just different ways. What was going through your mind at that point?
When you've had something that severe, it creates twofold. One, it creates almost like a traumatic brain injury and severe PTSD. It's hard to believe I'm better, right? Like you kind of have a real struggle. And so I would do stupid things like stub my toe and just start bawling, and my heart would race, and I'd start sweating and freaking out that it was going to turn into something again, like, oh, I messed with my body, or whatever, or I'd trip, or, whatever the case might be. Clip your toenails a little too small. And I would have these just full on panic attacks. And that was really, really hard, because it creates this thing in you that you don't want to leave the house. You don't want to be around people. You just want to bubble, because in the bubble, you don't hurt. So let me just stay in the bubble. And, again, I've got this just rock star husband. And he said, honey, I want you to, what are some things that you could do? And I was like, well, I still do Girl Scouts, twice a month. And I still do some things. And so he said, why don't you drive Uber? And I was like, what? Are you kidding? I can't. For 7 years, I couldn't be in a car more than 20 minutes without it flaring my body and debilitating me for days, weeks on end, where I wouldn't even be able to get out of the bed without help to go to the bathroom. So it was like, you've lost it. And he said, well, what do you got to lose? Like, do one ride. Let's just see how it goes. And so I did one ride. And then I remember like the first one I got that was 45 minutes away. I called John and I was just crying. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to have to just cancel the ride. And he said, honey, I'll sit on the phone with you. They'll never know I'm here. So I had my headphones in, and the person in the back seat, they didn't know there were tears dripping off of my chin. I was crying the whole way. But then it was, am I going to be able to get back, and come back? And it sounds crazy, but being at this app, conditioning versus my own, and forcing me to be in situations like that was so healing because I
Mhm.
developed a track record. And since I was able to do that, well, then let me try. I had begun at about 6 months of recovery. I took my first hike in the woods. Now, come on, it wasn't a hike, but I laced up my leather solo hiking boots and took my braces off and took a walk in the woods and cried. It was awesome. And over time, I began to just continue a little bit more, just a little bit more. I didn't go try to climb South Mountain. Like I just do a little bit more and gradually got to where I could do these amazing hikes, like Telegraph Pass and Camelback Mountain and things that a normal person would stress. And I was super fortunate. My kids would go, and I had girlfriends that would go with me because I was kind of weird about going by myself. I didn't know, like, am I going to get up there and not be able to put down? And I would turn to them because your muscles hurt, but I didn't have a cognitive understanding of what was normal and what was my pain. And so my girlfriends, I have this one friend, she's a nurse practitioner. And so as soon as we would get done with stuff, she'd go, hey, my thighs are burning. Are yours? Oh, yes. So thank you for telling me it's normal.
That's funny.
But you need people in your life to tell you where they're at and what's going on. And those simple little things like saying, hey, my thighs are burning was connected me to, okay, I'm normal. Oh, okay. This is what it feels like to live in my body again and not live in pain. And
Yeah.
and that's a big deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you need a tribe, you need a community to know you're not alone, right? And try
Yeah.
and struggle on our own and we try and hold it in and keep it all together, especially as moms. But we have to realize that we shouldn't do that. We need to have that connection. We need to have that community. And now looking back from where you were starting the Uber driving and starting to hike and when you defied the odds, the doctor said you're never going to hike again. Like that would be like telling me I'm never going to run again or
Yeah.
hike. I love hiking too. I think we connect on that level too. And it's what do you do in that moment? And is that going to wreck you or are you going to let it change you really? And now you run a successful online business as well. Could you have imagined that pre-struggle? Do you think that would have ever happened?
No. And, it was interesting. Like we talk about like what the doctor said. Like I remember even when I came into the doctor the first time without a wheelchair and said, hey, look at me, I'm getting better. And he said, now, Steph, let's see if you can dance in 3 months. It was a joke. And, had all these different people that were saying stuff like, yeah, okay, don't get connected to getting better because it's just against the odds. They wanted to protect me. But I learned in those moments, other people's opinions are none of my business. I could not let what they feared could happen to me control what I was going to do for today. I had to believe in myself and my own capability. Um, and no, I never, I've got a long history in sales and advertising, but the idea of even having a schedule or being awake for 8 hours a day at that point in my life, it just wasn't an option. And I look at so many people because I talk to people in the communities, right, of the conditions and struggles. It's like, we never develop one disease, it always layers. And I still talk to people in there and they'll say to me, they'll go, well, I've learned to live with it.
Mhm.
No, do not learn to live with it. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing I want to say to people is no, yuck. We don't live to learn with yuck. God didn't die on that cross for us to be sick and poor. He just didn't. And it's so hard for us to break out of what other people put on us compared to what the Father is telling us that we can do.
Mm.
And it's just a game changer when we step into that like possibility. You know, if it doesn't scare you a little bit, it's probably not worth doing. And so we have to be willing to be scared a little bit, step out and begin to do it. In 2019, when I started my coaching, I had no idea if I was going to be able to do it, or what that was going to even look like. But God.
Hmm. Yeah, so cool. And it's so true. Like just what you're talking about, take our eyes off of other people, not in a serving way, but stop looking in what other people are saying and look at what God says. What are
Hmm.
his truths? What are his promises? Look to him to know who you are. Don't look to other people.
Hmm.
No,
Hmm.
put those blinders on and go. Whatever God
Right.
says, that's where you go. And that's where you're led. And I feel like he took you on this journey, not a wanted journey. I don't think it was God given, but it sure was God used. And I would love to hear. I know there's so much. I mean, you probably learned so many life lessons. You probably learned a lifetime of lessons in this.
Yeah.
I think about I broke my ankle a few years back, and the things you're talking about are things I experienced on a very different level, right? Because it's that was like
Sure.
months of recovery, not years of pain. But I learned a lot of things along the way. But what was the biggest lesson that you think you took away from going from struggle to victory?
You know, well, we're moms, so let me stay with that vein. But motherhood, the guilt just keeps on giving. It doesn't stop giving. Every mom feels it, and I would feel so sad. I wasn't able to take my kids to this, or I couldn't go to my kids' performances at school a lot of times because the sound would cause pain. Um, my one of my kids was in a shooting club. Yeah, that was never going to happen. I watched from the car one time. But there was this sense of incredible guilt. Like you're just not giving enough. You just can't do enough. You're not, just kept staying there. But after time and looking back at the lens now, I realized I gave them exactly what they needed. I loved them. They curled up in the bed. They would come home from school and come in my room and crawl in bed with me and tell me about their day. And we would do their homework. We lived in my bed. Like my bed was our living. And, my kids turned into these incredibly empathetic, independent individuals. I mean, my middle son learned to cook at 9 years old. He got tired of having to wait for dad to get home. So he learned to whip the chicken out, season it, put it in the oven, and, do the basics. And I think so many times as parents, we have this perspective of what our life for our family is supposed to look like. And whether it be disease, divorce, financial destruction, what have you. And we begin to just like, it comes apart and we're like, oh, it's so terrible. But we don't know how God's going to use that
Mhm.
for the betterment of our family. I do not wish I could go through it again. Oh no. If I could avoid that sucker, I would have. But at the same time, I learned to slow down and be mindful in the moment of things where I had always been in a hurry, I always get stuff done. I was a go-getter, type A personality, get it done, get it done, get it done. You got to be a part of this and this and this. And now I know. Have you ever heard the spoon theory? Have you ever heard that before? Oh my gosh, it's great. So this gal, Christine, I can't think of her last name. I think it's on M right now. It's butyoudon'tlook.sick.com. So she had lupus, and her friend and her go to lunch one day, and her friend says, what's it like having lupus? And she's like, oh my gosh, you've known me my whole life, girl. You know what it's like. And she's like, no, 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 no. For you, what's it like? And so she gets up, she goes around the restaurant, and she grabs all the spoons off of all the tables. She has like 12, 15 spoons, I can't remember. And she goes, okay, now for every activity that you're going to do today, if it zaps your energy, have to take a spoon. Like some things don't mess with you, but many things do. So I want you to go through your day, and I'm going to give you a spoon for every spoon you use. You can't take any from you, keep any from yesterday, and you can't borrow any from tomorrow. It's all today. So her friend said, okay, I got up, and she goes, oh, not just one spoon. Wait. Did you sleep last night? Did the alarm go off? How did that affect you? Okay, so take a spoon. Okay, so I took a shower. Okay, did you wash your hair? Did you shave your legs? And she goes through these processes that to a normal, healthy individual, we don't even think about. But when you're chronically ill, we call those spoons. Count your spoons because you only get so many. You get only so many. And so you got to make them count. And she talked about when she came home at the end of the day, she only had a couple spoons left and she needed to make dinner and help the kids their homework and get the kids to bed. And what would you do with the things that you could no longer carry spoons for? And why it was important to look at those. It's a great understanding, I think, for the chronically ill to appreciate what they really go through, and for those that are healthy to know what the life of a chronically ill individual is like. But counting your spoons, I mean, even today, here I am in remission, living a very full, normal life, but I know how to count my spoons because we really only have so much of us.
Mhm.
And so we want to give the most of what that is, those spoons, to the things that matter the most in our lives.
I love that. That is so true. And I went on a similar journey of simplifying and having to let go and learn that I don't have to have control over everything, and I don't have to have everything. And so that's a huge lesson. What a cool analogy too. Just what are your spoons?
Yeah.
What's most important, and start there and really focus in on those. Oh man, this has been amazing. Stephanie, thank you so much for being willing to share your story. Now, if any of my listeners want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, I've kind of taken on the tagline Warrior Mompreneur. And so you can find me on Facebook. It's Stephanie. There's a lot of Stephanie Quarters. So I have Stephanie Alexander Quarter, my maiden name's included. And on Instagram, it's Warrior Mompreneur. And I have a private Facebook group called Warrior Mompreneur. And at the heart for that is just to help women who either they have had a chronic situation they've been dealing with, or someone they love is going through it. And they need to be or desire to be a mompreneur to manage all of those pieces. Because it is a different life. You're a warrior. And so learning to war that in a peaceful way is powerful. So any of those venues is a great way to reach out to me.
I love it. Warrior Empreneur. That's great. I can see the warrior in you, and I know that you inspire so many to be warriors. So thank you so much, Stephanie. I look forward to next week when we have her back on, and we are going to be talking about goals, but maybe in a special way that you haven't heard before. So make sure to come tune in.
I love it. I'll see you then.